Is that better, Lori? Can you see me now? Oh, goodness, I've been talking to myself for how many minutes? 6 minutes. But it's good because I got a rehearsal. I thought I'd press the button to go live and I didn't. I'm going, where are my friends? Okay, so today, and life and times of Dudjom Rinpoche, Jigdal Yeshe Dorje. And Dudjom Rinpoche was a great master of Tibetan Buddhism. As the people who've been following the story from the beginning know, he was a scholar, a great practitioner, and also it's called a treasure revealer. And in this context, a treasure revealer means someone who was destined to unearth teachings that were hidden by Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava in the 8th century AD. And this is the way our whole experience as practitioners in the Nyingma school in Tibetan Buddhism is framed as kind of a symbolic or metaphoric reliving of the life of the students of Guru Rinpoche. Like our teacher is viewed as Guru Rinpoche, the great, which means like precious one, and the ultimate teacher accomplished all paths and complete Buddhahood. So he's viewed as the second Buddha. But we are still very much followers of Shakyamuni Buddha as well. So he was what is needed for these times, later times. So Lori, why don't you throw a comment in the box and tell me you can actually see me now? Lori texted me and told me I was talking to myself and not online. I would like to talk to you today about some things in the latter part of Dudjom Rinpoche's time in Tibet, and then sort of wrap up with what happened after that, because Dudjom Rinpoche lived a nice long life, and so I'm sighing because I'm trying to. Can somebody throw a comment in the box and let me know that you can hear me, see me? Appreciate it. And I see the thumbs up. Okay. No, Laura, you're right. Thank you, she's saying. Hey, she's delayed. No, I was delayed. I just didn't quite get the right button pushed. So, we've talked about up through the period of time when Dudjom Rinpoche was founded the center of Lama Ling. And in the intervening weeks, since I talked to you last week about his great center and his 5 different ridges and their corresponding activities that took place on different ridges of this amazingly evocative landscape. Hey, Rob. I talked to my friend Drippen Fred from Pema Usaling, and he went and met one of Dudjom Rinpoche's daughters. This is not Dechen Yudrin, this is the other daughter. She's also got Yudrin in her name, Semo Yudrin. I'm not remembering her last name. I'm going to have to look it up before we leave here today. So she's still alive and living in, I believe, Amdo. And they asked her for stories. And this is how it filled in a piece for me. And the piece was, why Kongpo? How did Dudjom Rinpoche end up down there? And what about the monastery piece? You know, that we always talking about the yogis, because my teacher, Lama Tarchen Rinpoche, was one of the yogis there, or non-monastic practitioners. Well, Dudjom Rinpoche spent a lot of time at, I'm saying a lot of time, and I'm hearing Lama Tarchen saying in my ear, it wasn't that long. But anyway, he studied in Minderling Monastery, a major monastery for Nyingma Buddhism in central Tibet. And he gained, as he was wandering around, he gained, everybody respected him. So they had a falling down. You remember there was a disaster in 1930 at this sacred, it's like land acupuncture site or geomantic site in Kongpo, and they had a fallen down temple there, and they said, would you go down there and take over our monastery there and do, and when he went down there, he was able to get things done. And so indeed there was a monastery there, and they kept doing what they'd always been doing, Mindraling style. And so that's why we don't hear about it. We probably hear about it in the story of Mindraling Monastery more than in the story of Dudjom Rinpoche. I don't know. It's a question for the Mindraling Lamas. So that piece did thrive, and he did get the temple rebuilt and so forth. So after that, once he had a home base, he taught all over Tibet, but he also went to Sikkim, and he went to Bhutan, and that's sort of our subject for today. Bhutan's a kingdom, Himalayan kingdom. It still exists. It's a Vajrayana Buddhist kingdom, whole country for Vajrayana Buddhists, tiny and mountainous, beautiful. I've been there, so I'm going to show you some pictures I took, just a little bit, but related to our topic today. The most famous holy place of many holy places in Bhutan. Anybody know what it is? The most famous holy place in Bhutan, at least for people outside of Bhutan. What is the place everybody goes to visit in Bhutan? Not that far from the main airport in Paro. Well, it's called Paro Taktsang, and that means tiger's nest. And there's many places called tiger's nests. Who knew tigers had nests? I would have thought they had lairs. But this is a common expression, taksang, which they translate as tiger's nest. Tak is tiger. Yes, sir. The comments pop up, sometime after you leave them. So, yes, you're right. Tiger's nest. That's right. So, and this is a place where Guru Rinpoche, in the form, manifesting in the form of Dorje Drolo, a very wrathful, crazy-looking emanation, with his robes on backwards and wielding a purba, which we're going to talk about what a purba is, and a dorje, eyes wide open, dark brown, kind of brown or red in color, standing on the back of a pregnant tigress, who was actually a manifestation of one of his girlfriends, consorts, Tashi Chidran, stayed at Tiger's Nest. And you'll see it's perched on the side of a cliff, and enacted, did amazing magical deeds there. So everybody goes to Tiger's Nest. And let's bring up a slideshow and just see what happened. But Dudjom Rinpoche's experience there is a heck of a lot different than mine. All right, so you seeing that slideshow up there? I hope so. So Dudjom Rinpoche went to Bhutan, which was once a part of Tibet, and there was a religious political split, not between Buddhism and another religion, but within a certain school of Buddhism, and then politics that went along with it, and this little wing or distant from central Tibet, became a separate country called Bhutan a few hundred years ago. I'm going to have to... Oh, I lost my slideshow. Let me bring it back again. Scenes. Okay, here we go. Phew. Go back there. So you climb up a long way. For Tibetanese, it's like nothing. They just run up that hillside. But for me, I could get about halfway to that temple. That is Paro Taktsang, which is a monastery that's sprung up around a cave or outcropping, which was Guru Rinpoche's sacred place. And this is taken from the lunch spot. Many of my friends, my friends who were with me, they could all go all the way. And some people take little mules or donkeys up I guess small horses, I don't know, up this steep rocky path. And I didn't feel, it wasn't offered to me as a possibility, but I also feel like I didn't want to burden an animal. And so someday I'll get all the way up there, but I had a wonderful time looking across this ravine at Paro Taktsang. Isn't it beautiful? It was just amazing. And you know, on a group tour, you're just happy for any moment you have alone. And I sat there on the hillside near the lunch spot and just practiced and prayed and looked across the valley at Paro Taktsang. So there's all the steep stairs that run all the way up to that. And so that's where the hard part comes. For the people who are, even to people who are fit, they definitely come back sweaty. But Dudjom Rinpoche clearly made it all the way up there. I don't know if he hiked up or took a horse up. And he practiced. He got to do retreat in that place. And he was practicing Vajrakilaya. Or was it Desert Troll? Let me look here on my little source text. He was practicing in the cave in 1937. So how old was he then? He was born in 1904. 33. And he was making sacred substance from a Vajrakilaya text that he practiced from another treasure revealer. And how you make this, usually it's a group practice, and they didn't specify whether there's a whole group up there with him. I suspect there was, because it's a big project to make sacred medicine. It takes a lot of ingredients, and you usually make a large amount, and it kind of becomes imbued with blessing and ferments on the spot, and multiplies in size as it becomes sanctified, we'll say. And he was doing that when he had a dream of a woman with a beautiful dress and ornaments, and he knew that was Yeshe Sogya. And she handed him a 6-inch, clearly detailed meteorite purba. So there's a picture of Yeshe Sogya. And she was a purba master. Through the strength of her practice, she revived a young man who was taken for dead or was dead by pointing her purba at him. That's her most magical story. And she said, this is the actual ritual implement that Guru Rinpoche held here in this place at Gungtong Mountain Pass. Oops. Oh yeah, no. In Paro Taktsang. And at Gungtong Mountain Pass, Guru Rinpoche had given this to me as a parting gift. Now I'm going to give this to you. You must keep it as your heart treasure. And she began to put it in the fold of his chuba, or his robes. And he was so happy, he grabbed it out of her hands. And she pressed it to his, they say, 3 places. And the 3 places are the forehead, throat, and heart, right? So representing the Buddha body, speech, and mind, which is what you do when you've when you're having a wonderful experience and you want to turn to become stabilized in your mind. You want to really gain realization, not just a temporary meditation experience. So he grabbed it out of her hand and he touched it through his 3 places. And when he got to his heart, he became inseparable with the purba in this dream. And the upper part of his body was normal. And then the lower part of his body was an iron purba with sparkling flames. And what is a purba? Let me look at it. Let me see if I have a picture here for you. Oh, we're very lucky. Here's a really amazing purba from a contemporary purba maker. They're usually, upright. So this is, but we're looking down on it. It's lying on a wooden surface to demonstrate how it looks to people. And this is, that blade on it has 3 sides. And it's basically a symbol. It's based on a tent peg. You can imagine a 3-sided tent peg, can't you? Banging in one of those. Now I think they're a different shape, but even in my life, tent pegs have been shaped like that. You banging on the top of it. And this has become to symbolize each blade, each face of the blade becomes a symbol of a different aspect of complete enlightenment. The 3 bodies are kayas of enlightenment. One side Dharmakaya, one side Nirmanakaya, one side Sambhogakaya. These 3 aspects of awakening. So in other words, purba symbolizes in our practice suddenly getting, through the practice really penetrating so that we're completely awakened in 100%. Our mind stream is liberated from cyclic existence and becomes purely Buddha. Yes, there are kind of quasi-sorcery activities that can be done with this, but really, this is the meaning. It's a Buddhist practice for liberation at its very core. Oh, what's the turquoise dog about? We're almost there. So, in that moment after his body became a purba, Yeshe Sogyal said, that is the real empowerment and blessings. The whole earth was like trembling and shaking, and he's emanating sparks in this amazing dream. He said, this is the treasure of all Tantra teachings and pith instructions in one single state. Don't neglect this. It has great purpose. Do you remember completely receiving these teachings, empowerments, and pith instructions from Guru Rinpoche in ancient times? And then she pulled on his hand, extending his arm, and he woke up from the dream. And when he woke up, he could remember all those teachings he'd received from Guru Rinpoche. Cool, huh? It came clearly to mind, and he transcribed it. He said if he had transcribed everything he received in that moment, the transmission, it would have been larger than all of his preceding past lives emanations had generated. And there were many, many, many instructions about special practices that were unknown before. But, he said, revealing Terma involves you in a lot of work with little to show for it, so I set it aside. However, at the age of 45, sometimes the location of these things, I don't know where he was at the age of 45 when this happened, but in the first month of the lunar year, on the 10th day, meaning Guru Rinpoche Day, he was urged by many internal and external circumstances not to neglect his own share of the teaching, meaning this destined treasure for him to reveal. And so he transcribed a small portion of the massive amount of teachings that he could see. And immediately after transcribing them or writing them all out, the Putri Rekpong, which is the practice we do most commonly here in the United States as a Vajrakilaya practice, a beautiful turquoise female dog appeared in front of me with a joyful expression. Well, there you go. And and the dog said a lot of things to him. Talking dog, smiling, very joyful. And this is not a dream. This is a waking experience. And he said many times esoteric things to him. But this is sort of the essence. By maturing the aspirations and good karma of the past, in order to benefit all beings in the future, this secret treasure, which is the supreme essence, the heart realization of the three masters, is the creation, completion, and great completion stage. The three masters, there are three great masters of Dorje Purba in the past. So, at the end it said, I, the female dog, who looks like a ferocious tiger pouncing on an enemy in ancient times in the cave of Yang Lashe, a different cave, I kept this Vajra command of the great Guru. I made this announcement for all who are karmically connected, who have not deceived, are not deceiving, and will not deceive Samaya, their sacred oaths. And then she disappeared. So, I don't have experiences like that, but I do have the experience of having met some of these great lamas. And Dudjom Rinpoche had to leave Tibet. And he told Chagtuku, who was had great connection to California here, that this practice of Dorje Purba and the practice of Dorje Trullo, which he discovered when he was a young boy and then wrote down when he was in his 50s, were and perhaps Troma, I can't remember that piece, the most wrathful practices, were the most important practices for this day. And so he returned to his to Lama Ling in Kangpo, and it became obvious in the mid-50s that what was going to happen with the political situation. And Dudjom Rinpoche did some back and brought some of the texts out of Tibet and into various locations, Kalimpong, India. I'm not sure exactly where all his texts were stored, but he and his students did various trips back and forth, even after the situation got very bad, bringing out all the texts and sacred substances and even the body of a great master that was kind of kept as a sacred item. This sounds gruesome, but actually in sitting posture, and you would paint the body so it was like a statue, more like a statue more than a body. So that was brought out by some of his disciples and so forth. So I think this picture must be in outside of Tibet, because here we have Dodrup Chen. This might be Sikkim, who knows? Dodrup Chen is based in Sikkim on the left, and second from the left is Sansar Khyentse Rinpoche, who many of you have met or seen, and then Kyabje Dudjom Rinpoche himself, And then this is Gongjong Rinpoche, who I don't know, and I don't know this gentleman to the far right. I wanted to show you a picture during this transitional period. Dudjom Rinpoche wasn't so very old. Then here is on the left is Dudjom Rinpoche doing practice in another sacred place of Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava, Tsopema, in a cave in India, northern India. And then above, I don't know where these pictures are taken, above and below to the right, but I wanted to show a picture of Dudjom Rinpoche, as many people, Westerners, knew him. He came to the United States. He traveled all, it's amazing the places he went. For sure, he was in New Mexico, Colorado. I've seen a movie of him attending a Karmapa ceremony in Oakland, California. He was very active in the United States and traveled all over the place. And then he moved to France, and he was near some retreat centers there. And the students, sometimes when he couldn't, was too old to travel over, they would be put on a bus. People in 3-year retreat facilities would be put on a bus and come over and visit with him. And he would bless them, teach them. And so Dudjom Rinpoche was a major, major figure in bringing the Dharma to the West. And to the left here we see Dongse Tilly Norba Rinpoche with Dudjom Rinpoche sitting on a beach. And Dongse Tilly Norba Rinpoche ended up living in the United States, and he urged the figure on the right, Lama Tarchen Rinpoche, also to permanently locate to the United States, who was my teacher and the teacher of many hundreds of people, as was Dongse Tilly Norba Rinpoche. They had a teacher-student relationship. Tarchen Rinpoche was a very, very devoted disciple after the passing of Dudjom Rinpoche of Tilly Norba Rinpoche, and all of these wonderful teachers have passed into parinirvana at this point. Thought I'd throw up a picture of my 3-year retreat group. So under the head of Dongse Tilly Norba Rinpoche, Lama Tarchen Rinpoche ran a 3-year retreat facility. Many, many groups went through, 10 or more at a time. And there's Lama Tarchen Rinpoche in the middle. Can you find me in there? I'm in the back row there, and with the tall people. To the right, it's kind of to the right. It's hard to tell because I was shaggy. You let your hair grow out traditionally in 3-year retreat. So everybody went through Lama Tarchen's retreat, learned, at least did the retreat on the razor that destroys at the touch, the Putri Rekpung sadhana that I just described the discovery of. And Lama Tarchen Rinpoche himself was in a group of 4 retreatants in Kongpo who practiced that terma right away, like it was hot off the griddle under Dudjom Rinpoche's direct guidance. And Lama Tarchen Rinpoche taught us the very, very traditional ways to do it exactly as Dudjom Rinpoche taught it, from right down to the extreme level of detail of the ritual involved, but also, more importantly, the innermost meaning. Why am I saying this? We're not important. I'm certainly not important. If I look at that group, I think everybody was a better practitioner than I was. But here we are. They're gone. Lama Tarchen Rinpoche is gone now, and we're still carrying on as best we can. Here is me with a scruffy hairdo, and some people practicing. We've made this a very important practice as our little center here in Oakland. And so you can see now the thread that goes down through the kindness, incredible kindness and patience of these lamas, teaching us Westerners who really don't even know Buddhism to begin with, and taking us up piece by piece, year after year, decade after decade, through all the details and intricacies of this sublime sacred practice. And that's my slideshow. Do you have any questions about Vajrakilaya? I want to talk a little bit about meaning. A little bit more about meaning. Let me try to get my picture back here. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. There we go. Hi. So, the point of Dharma is to blossom your wisdom and your compassion. Wisdom here doesn't mean like being a smart person necessarily. Doesn't depend on intelligence at all. Wisdom is about tuning in to the fundamental nature of reality more and more until you become somebody like Dudjom Rinpoche, a Buddha, or Lama Tarchen Rinpoche, for whom this is constantly accessible. And even when they're thinking, planning continuously, even though there's, Tarchen Rinpoche said, I believe him, I don't have this experience myself, even though this cogitation is going on in the front of the brain, in the back of the brain, your mind's always resting in this equanimity. And with that equanimity and great openness and freedom comes as upwelling of compassion naturally, because these great masters, their mind is, think of everything that Dudjom Rinpoche went through in his mind, in his life. My gosh. And Lama Tarchen Rinpoche fleeing over the mountains with his elderly parents, over the Himalayas from the Chinese, watching the whole place he had been, saying goodbye, the place he'd been raised, the temple that he'd helped build, going into a refugee community. I think Dudjom Rinpoche is maybe a little bit more protected, I don't know. Going to having his father die, talking now about Lama Tarchen Rinpoche, of infectious disease in this tropical climate they'd never been in before, in a whole new world. Like Lama Tarchen Rinpoche thought his aspiration was to be like Milarepa, and if he couldn't be like Milarepa, he wanted to be like Shabkar. If you haven't read Shabkar's life story, I recommend it. And Shabkar was amazing. And that means spending your whole life and wandering from one retreat place to the next, becoming a great, incredible Mahasiddha. But so when he came out of his 3-year retreat, which was near the end, he'd done many years of retreat. Ultimately, he did 8, and I'm not sure where all those took place. He was planning to see, he was going to see his mother and he went to his mother and he said, Mom, I know that I've missed you so much. It's been great to be with you, but my goal is really to go back into, to wander as a unknown person, very humble, nobody knowing, because everybody wanted to treat him like a Lama, an important person, because he was from a Lama family. And that wasn't his aspiration. It was just to sneak off into obscurity, practice in mountain hideaways. And he said the Chinese took care of that problem of being famous and for him. And they took him away from his familiar places. And because pretty soon thereafter he had to go into exile. And so these masters, though joyful, they weren't immune to feeling. If this situation now is going on, and that it is, these Rinpoches would feel for everybody's suffering. but they wouldn't hold on to it, you know? So you'd hear them talk about how horrible it was, and then it would be next minute they'd be laughing, because their mind naturally reverts to a state of seeing the big, huge picture, not the little, all what's going on right now. It abides in this continuous state that continues from lifetime to lifetime, called Dharmakaya, or the perfectly pure formless form of awakening. Geez, I'm talking a lot. We haven't practiced at all. Isn't that terrible? And I just want to say about Vajrakilaya specifically, it's famous for overcoming obstacles. And sometimes people even did the practice before they did their Ngunda or their foundational practices. In some societies, like Repkong, the Nakpas of Repkong in Amdo, yeah, kids would do the Vajrakilaya practice first, and it's a very vivid, a lot of vivid visualization in it that normally you'd think was not child suitable, but it's very magnetizing, very intense, and keeps your interest. So I'm just gonna, and it overcomes all kinds of obstacles, from ordinary everyday obstacles to the ultimate obstacle, which is our own awakening. And I myself would say I was drawn to doing it right away. I started working intensively with it before I was done with my first Ngunda. And I'm really glad I did, because I had the metaphor for, besides the tent peg, the three-sided tent peg or dagger, is a metaphor is like you're defeating the armies of Mara in battle. And what is Mara? It's like delusion, aggressively trying to keep you in delusion, confusion. And so there's a vivid visualization of this amazing fiery deity. It's at times shooting out fire and weapons and sharp beams of light, and surrounded by a wall bigger than Trump's wall. You can create the ultimate protection dome. It's like taking a mind like that wants to build a wall and protect themselves and sees enemies everywhere. The kind of mind that would want a huge dome made of interlocked metal weapons, fire, and so forth, to protect yourself, and then shoot at everything that you perceived as coming into that space or might even intrude, and until you suddenly realize that all what you're shooting at is not out there, it's in here. It doesn't mean you're trying to kill yourself, but you know what I mean? It's like the mind that wants to find an enemy, the mind that sees phenomena, everything that arising, as enemy and scary and other than self. This dualistic mind, they say, is the very thing that you're trying to defeat. And at some point you just crack doing this practice, and you go, wait a minute, what is this about? And I had a lot of us in the mentality, and I'm going to say right now I'm struggling with a relapse because of societal circumstances in America here. But I do feel unconditional love for living beings, and I hope you do too. And it really, practice in general, Vajrayana practice speeds up. Yes, we do. It's a form of shamatha. It includes vipassana. It includes everything in one, as we stab through all of our delusions and find that place. So let's practice a little bit of So the deal on Vajrayana practices, there's policies and procedures. You have to, it's one step by step. So you go undergo the process like a Vajrakilaya. You say, oh, I really want to do that practice. Well, you have to find a Vajrakilaya master who holds the lineage, and then you receive what's called an empowerment, a ceremony coronating, enthroning you as Vajrakilaya, and then you receive transmissions and a lot of instruction. And so it's a personal relationship. And this year, maybe that's a little hard to find because we can't go meet with people in person. But maybe we can aspire for next year or the year after. And so there's a process. So instead, we're going to do unelaborate meditation here. And find my little, I still prefer, my friends gave me this a few years ago for my birthday. It's tiny, Tibetan bowl. So let's just rest our minds in meditation, relax. Just open in a very simple way. And if the thoughts come, let them come, but don't dwell on them. It's that simple, really. Let your eyes penetrate whatever objects come into your field of vision. Just like they're totally traversable. back. Sometimes you can put your consciousness out here and look back. Or look back and through your own body. Look at your own awareness. If a thought arises, you can talk to it. What color are you, thought? Where'd you come from? Where'd you go? All right, let's think about all those living beings. Through this merit, may all beings attain the omniscient state of enlightenment and conquer the enemy of faults and delusions. May they all be liberated from this ocean of samsara and from its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Any questions? So I'll be back next week, and we have Rob. We have some dream yoga groups starting in September. If you're interested in that, you can talk to me. And anybody's watching after the fact, goodbye to you. Thank you for staying. Goodbye to, and I'll see you next week.